Hello everyone, and today we will be talking about color grading. Alright, so quite some people have asked me about color grading and how to do it. So today I've decided to make a video about color grading. Now, first off the bat, there is no one way to actually color grade a footage. There are no set of set instructions that you should actually follow to color grade a footage. So it's actually completely up to your creativity when it comes to color grading, because it's totally down to you as the filmmaker to determine how you want your footage to look like. So color grading is a tool you use to alter the look of your footage to get your footage to look like how you want your footage to look like. So it's basically changing the feel of the footage to give it that feel that you originally intended to give it. So I'll give you a few examples later on. So first of all these footages, I'm going to show you a few samples, and these footages are all shot using my Canon EOS 70D. So I shot all this with the Technicolor CineStyle picture profile, so it gives a very nice flat color tone. Sorry, not color tone, it gives a nice flat picture profile. So if you don't know what Technicolor CineStyle is, I've made a video about Technicolor CineStyle earlier, so I'll have it pop up here, so you can click on it to go to that video if you don't know what it is. Basically, it's a picture profile for Canon cameras, so you can install it into your camera and you'll get a nice raw looking flat image out of your camera sensor. So I like to color grade straight in my NLE, which is Adobe Premiere Pro. Now some people like to export it to After Effects to grade it in After Effects. Some people use plugins. Now I personally use the Colorista 2 plugin to color grade in Premiere Pro. Now it's just much easier to use, it's very straightforward, but for demonstration purposes here, because not everyone has Colorista 2, I'll be using RGB curves, which is built into Premiere Pro. Now I'm using Premiere Pro CC right here. Some people, especially professionals, now they use dedicated color grading software like DaVinci Resolve. So those software will give you a much higher level of control over how you color grade your footage. So basically, when we talk about color grading, it's basically manipulating colors. You're colorizing your footage based on three different levels. Basically, the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. So the shadows basically just affect the shadows, the dark bits of your image, and we have the midtones, which would alter the mid-range, those bits in the middle of the histogram, and we have the highlights, which are basically the bright bits. So with that, let's jump into it. So like I said, there's no one way to color grade the footage. So generally, when we watch, say, a cinematic film, the perception of that cinematic look we see is basically having bluish, cyan-looking highlights. Shadows. So we get nice, cool shadows, and we have warm highlights, basically reddish or orangish highlights. So let's demonstrate that with this footage here. So first of all, because it's a flat picture profile, so I will add some contrast to it because it looks very not contrasty. So I'll pump in some blacks and then add in some highlights. So it's looking pretty nice here. Now I would want to give it that bluish shadow look by removing some reds. Now basically these curves correspond to the histogram. The left bits are the dark bits and the right bits are the brighter bits in the histogram. So I will subtract some reds from the shadows, so I'll be left with green and blue. So you can see that greenish blue color. So we're already close to that cool shadow look. So it looks too greenish here, so I'm going to subtract some green and we're left with mostly blue. Now let's add a bit more of blue in there, and we already have that nice bluish shadows. Now let's add in some yellowish reddish highlights. So basically that's an orangish feel. So I'll take away some blues from the highlights, so we have some yellow, and I'll add in some reds. And then we have a very simple grade there. We already have a nice simple grade. Now you can alter your grade to have it look very subtle, or you can have a very strong grade, depending again on how strong you want the look to be. So let's check out before and then after the grade. You can see it has a huge impact on your image. So just some simple color grading can enhance your picture quite a long way. So there we have that. So now let's move on. So this is one way to color grade your footage, but I would not do this to every single piece of footage I have. I would not just go around and adding blues to the shadows and adding reds to the highlights of all my footage, because like I said, there's no one way to color grade. It's entirely up to your purpose and the look you are after. So it takes a bit of trial and error until you get closer and closer to the look you want. So let's demonstrate using another clip here. Alright, so this clip is of a back alley. So let's say here I want the clip to have a horror film look. So it looks kind of scary, it looks kind of eerie, it's dark, and I just want it to look scary, eerie, and as if something's not quite right. So usually when we go with the horror genre, we want a very dark and image with greenish shadows. Basically, when you watch horror films, they basically grade the shadows to make it sort of greenish and dark, and it's very not saturated. So with this, actually I would start by removing some of that saturation. So I'll turn down the saturation on this image. I'll layer this. Now the order of the effects do matter, so I'll turn it down to about -40. Yep, that should be good enough. And then with this, I want a very dark feel to it, so I'm gonna add in a lot of blacks. So that looks kind of good. Yep. Have it nice and harsh, and then I'll pretty much leave the highlights where they are. I'm gonna make it a little sort of darker. Yes. So we have nice contrast there, very nice contrast. So now let's add in a bit of greens to the shadows. So again, I'll be taking away reds from the shadows, and you can see we have that cyan look creeping in there. So now let's take away some blues, so we're left with more green. I'll add in a little more green. Now the green looks a little bit too vibrant now, but it will be counteracted by the highlights later on. So we're not quite there yet, but generally we want some very bright and harsh reddish highlights. So I'll add in some of that there. Add in some yellows to the highlights, and add in some magenta to the highlights. Now we sort of have the look we want, but I want the green to be a little stronger. So let's take away some more reds, add in a little more green to the shadows, and there we pretty much already have the look I would like. So now sometimes it helps to add a vignette to strengthen the effect. So generally with Colorista 2 it's very simple, because well, I have it on preset here. We have some built-in tools in Colorista. We have masks, so you can use the masking to create the vignette that you want. But if you don't have Colorista, you can always whip out a vignette in Photoshop, which would end up looking something like this. Just use the gradient tool or whatsoever. There are a million ways to do this. Export it as a PNG, and then just overlay that on top of your image, and you can just use the opacity slider to control the intensity of that vignette. So right now I'll stick to the Colorista one, because personally I like the look of that better. And already you can see how much it does for your image. So it definitely changes the entire look of your image. Again, like what I just said, color grading is not about just color grading, it's about changing the look of your footage to make it look the way you want it to. So you get it to look how you originally intended to look like while you were shooting the footage. So it gets closer to the final result you actually want. So let's show a split view. You can see this has come quite a long way. Let me turn the vignetting off as well. So this is before and this is after. You can see how much impact it has on the image. Completely changes the feel of the image to a very nice dark eerie look. So if you're after this effect, of course. So let's move on. And here we have a shot of some weeds. So with this, I kind of want a nice sunset, a warm sunny feel to it. So straight away I'm thinking yellowish orange. So that's pretty much the look we are after. So let's smack in some RGB curves. Then again, we will add some contrast, but because I want it to be nice and sunny, I want it to be kind of high key, so I don't want too many blacks, but of course I would still want some shadows in there. And then I'll turn up the highlights by quite a bit. And then let me change the midtones. The midtones are a little neutral here, so I'll add in some reds to the midtones, and you can see it's already warming up. And then I'll add in some yellows by taking away blues into the midtones. And that looks pretty good. So let me add in the touch of magenta. Alright, so that is already pretty good. Now with the shadows, I want some brownish, kind of reddish looking shadows. So I'll pump in some red. Now my shadows aren't really quite there yet, so I'll add in a bit more of that. Just crush the shadows a bit further. Add in a bit of yellows to the shadows. Then it's a bit too red in my opinion, so I'll take away a bit of the red. The highlights, I'll add in some red, and then I'll add in a generous amount of yellow into the shadows. Now this is considered a rather harsh look to this, because well, I don't really mind it looking harsh in this, because I wanted a nice sort of sunny sunset kind of feel to it. So I'll give it a bit more of that yellow. Now, too much yellow on its own would leave your image looking very unnatural like this. So my advice would be, if you want to put in yellow, be sure to counteract it with a fair bit of red as well, so you get orange instead of just weird yellow. So yeah, I'm pretty good with this. So as you can see, before after, you completely change the look of your image from this kind of dull look to that nice sunny sunset look I am after, the very nice warm tone of the sun. Alright, so on to the next clip. So for this one, we have the shot of a green plant. So obviously I want this to look nice and green. So RGB curves. So it's very not contrasty here, so I'll add in quite a fair bit of contrast. Quite a bit of highlights. Now add a bit of the midtones here, but kill some of that there. Actually, that's looking like crap, so alright, I'll stick with this level. Now straight off the bat, you can see it's actually already looking pretty good, so, but let's enhance the colors a bit. So with the shadows, let's take away some red, so we have that cyan kind of look there. Alright, the cyan's adding quite a bit of life to the plants, and then we will add a bit of green, not too much green, or it will just look plain fake. And then we can soften it with a bit of yellow as well. Green goes well with yellow. And then with the highlights, I'd add in a bit of red, so we have an orangish yellowish highlight look. And there, it's already looking pretty good. I'm quite satisfied with that. So you can see even a simple shot like this with some very simple color grading, you can take it to the next level. Now usually after I color grade, I'd add a sharpening filter straight in after, sorry, not After Effects, Premiere. Set it to about 30, and it just sharpens your image that much more, because DSLR footage just looks like mud right out of the box. So there we have that. Again, like I said earlier, there's no one exact way to color grade your footage, so use color grading as a tool to bring your footage closer to what you want it to look like. So you don't really have to need paid plugins like Colorista 2 to color grade your footage. You can just use RGB curves right out of Premiere, but personally I prefer RGB curves. It's because it's more intuitive. It's I wouldn't say it's exactly easier to use, but it sort of is easier to use. It's more direct, it's more straightforward. Because RGB curves, you have all the tools you need right at your fingertips. You have your shadows and your highlights, and then you have a color wheel instead of curves. So you can just pinpoint straight towards the color you want. You can go straight for the look you want, so you can concentrate more on your creative side other than having to worry about you know, graphs and curves and everything. So Colorista is a very nice plugin in my opinion. Go get it if you like it and you do a lot of color grading. But of course RGB curves works just as great, and I find it easier to use to apply minor adjustments in Colorista compared to RGB curves, because curves can be a little fiddly at times. But basically that's it. I'm not endorsing Colorista 2 in any way, I just like it. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have questions and comments, just post them in the comments section below. I'll try my best to answer. So other than that, thank you very much for watching this fairly long tutorial on color grading. So again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.